Okay, in the previous examples, we discussed how the economy will behave if there's an aggregate demand shock. And we know the aggregate demand shock, like the stock market crash, will push the aggregate demand curve to the left. And according to our model, we can find out in the short run the aggregate output reduced, which means that that's a recession. The average price level will decline, which means that's a deflation. But how can economy recover from the short run recession? In the previous example, we know economy eventually will move back to the long run equilibrium output. But we also know it may take a long time for the economy to recover from the recession. So following that example, we try to discuss whether the Federal Reserve or central bank can take some monetary policies to help economy recover more quickly from the recession. So again, we begin with our model. Price, aggregate output, long run aggregate supply, short run aggregate supply, and aggregate demand curves. The initial equilibrium point will be intersection of these three curves: price, output. So assume that the aggregate demand shock, in this case, still assume stock market crash. And we know if the stock market crashed, the wealth of the people declined. With lower level of the wealth, people will spend less money on the goods and the services, so which means consumption goes down. Using our aggregate expenditure function, we know lower level of the consumption will lead to the lower level of the aggregate expenditure. So which means aggregate demand for all goods and service goes down. So that will push the aggregate demand curve shift to left. So economy will move from the point A to point B. So that's the first movement here. And that's exactly what we learned from the previous example. From A to B, we can see the aggregate output Y decline from Y0 to Y1. That's what we said, recessions. Plus, price level will drop from the P0 to P1. That's what we call a deflation. And of course, you can imagine under this case at point B, many people may suffer because the recession, many people lose their job or be laid off. So how can the Federal Reserve or central bank help economy to recover from the point B? So that's what we need to discuss here. Instead of letting the economy recover by itself, suppose the Fed use an expansionary monetary policy. So which means Federal Reserve will increase money supply. So what happened to the economy? Does this affect aggregate demand curve or short-run aggregate supply curve? If you can recall what we learned previously, this actually will affect the aggregate demand. But aggregate demand will shift to the right or left. And we have to use the liquidity preference model. In the liquidity preference model, interest rate, real money balance, real money supply, and money demand. And then we know this can determine the equilibrium interest rate. So with the money supply increase, this vertical curve will shift to the right because the M increased in the numerator. So it will push down the interest rate according to the model here. So we know in the liquidity preference model, equilibrium interest rate goes down. So that will actually stimulate the economy because people will buy more house and autos by using the loan. Firm will make more investment by using the loan again. So aggregate expenditure will start to increase, which means aggregate demand will go up. So after Federal Reserve take expansionary monetary policy, the aggregate demand curve will shift from AD prime back to the AD. So in the graph I use a 2, means that that's the second step. So what happened here? After economy shift from the AD prime to AD, the whole economy, the equilibrium point will move from B back to A. So in that case, you can definitely see output will increase from Y1 to Y0. And the price level will increase from the P1 to P0. So using the expansionary monetary policy, according to our models, you would definitely see that the economic growth Y increased here. And at the same time, price level increased. Yeah, it may help economy recover quickly from the recession instead of letting the economy to recover by itself for a very long period of time.